Rome, 96 AD. The empire stands at a precipice. The streets whisper of blood, betrayal, and a tyrant's fall. Emperor Domitian lies dead, stabbed in his own palace by the very men sworn to protect him. The Senate rejoices, but their celebration is short-lived. For in the shadows of power, a question lingers. Who could possibly steer Rome back from the brink of chaos? The answer came in the form of an old man, a senator, a survivor, his name, Nerva. And in just 16 months, this unlikely emperor would reshape Rome's destiny in ways no one saw coming. Domitian's reign had been one of paranoia and terror. He purged senators, executed rivals, and ruled with an iron fist. But tyranny, as history teaches us, sows the seeds of its own destruction. On that fateful September day, his own court turned against him, and with his death, Rome faced a crisis, not just of leadership, but of survival. The Senate moved quickly. They needed a leader who could unite, not divide, someone experienced, but not dangerous. Their choice? Marcus Cocceius Nerva, a 65-year-old statesman with no military background, no heirs, and no obvious ambition for power. On paper, he was a compromise. In reality, he was a revolution waiting to happen. Nerva was no fool. He knew accepting the purple cloak was a death sentence. The Praetorian Guard, still loyal to Domitian's memory, watched him with suspicion. The legions, scattered across the empire, had not sworn allegiance. And the people? They had seen emperors come and go like the shifting tides of the Tiber. But Nerva did something no emperor had dared in decades. He listened. He pardoned exiles. He restored confiscated property. And in one bold stroke, he declared that never again would a Roman senator be executed without trial. It was a promise of justice, but would it be enough? The ghosts of Domitian's reign still haunted the city. The Praetorians, furious at Nerva's leniency, demanded vengeance for their fallen emperor. Then, disaster struck. A rebellion in the provinces, mutiny in the legions. Rome's fragile peace was unraveling, and Nerva's gamble seemed doomed to fail. But this old man had one last move, a decision so radical it would change the course of history forever. And that is where the true story begins. Rome, 97 AD. The empire teetered on the edge of anarchy. Nerva's reforms had bought him time, but not loyalty. The Praetorian Guard, furious at his mercy toward Domitian's assassins, stormed the palace. They dragged his advisors into the streets and butchered them before his eyes. The message was clear: bow to us or join them. In that moment, the old emperor faced a choice: surrender to the swords at his throat or rewrite the rules of power itself. Nerva knew his reign was crumbling. He had no sons, no army, no fear to wield like Domitian, but he had something far more dangerous: wisdom. And so, he made the most audacious decision in Roman history. He would choose his successor, not by blood, but by merit. His choice? Marcus Ulpius Traianus, Trajan, a Spaniard, a soldier, a man who had spent his life on the frontiers, far from the scheming halls of Rome. The Senate was stunned, the Praetorians outraged, but Nerva's message was unmistakable. The next emperor will be Rome's greatest defender, not its prisoner. This was no mere political maneuver, it was a revolution. For centuries, emperors had clung to power through dynasty or dagger, but Nerva's adoption of Trajan shattered tradition. It meant the empire would no longer be inherited, it would be earned, and the effects were immediate. The mutinous legions, who respected Trajan's steel, stood down. The Praetorians, now facing a future under a warrior emperor, hesitated. Even the people, long weary of weak rulers, whispered hope. For the first time in decades, Rome had not just an emperor, but a plan. But not everyone celebrated. The old aristocracy seethed. To them, Trajan was an outsider, a provincial upstart. Whispers spread: Nerva is a puppet. Trajan will seize power before the old man's body is cold. And then, the unthinkable happened. Just 16 months after taking the throne, Nerva collapsed. Fever ravaged him. Some said it was age, others poison. As the life faded from his body, one question consumed Rome: would Trajan honor Nerva's vision, or would the empire descend into civil war? The answer would define Rome for centuries to come. October 97 AD. Nerva was dead. The Praetorian Guard stood armed in the streets. The Senate held its breath, and, in the north, the legions of Germania waited for Trajan's order. Would he march on Rome, or would he prove Nerva's faith was not misplaced? What happened next would decide the fate of an empire. Trajan did not rush to Rome. He did not purge his rivals. Instead, he did something no one expected. He waited. For weeks he remained at the frontier, securing the borders, as if to prove his loyalty was not to power, but to Rome itself. And with every battle won, every barbarian raid crushed, the message was clear. This was no usurper. This was an emperor who earned his throne, not in the palace, but on the battlefield. Back in Rome, the old aristocracy plotted. To them, Trajan was still an outsider, a Spaniard, a soldier, a man who had never bowed in their circles. He will destroy us, they whispered. He will avenge Nerva by spilling spilling our blood. But when Trajan at last rode into the city, he did so not as a conqueror, but as a servant of the Senate and people of Rome. And his first act, he knelt before Nerva's ashes and swore an oath: "I will rule as he taught me, by law, not by fear." The Praetorians, expecting execution, found instead raised pay. The exiled, expecting vengeance, found amnesty. And the Senate, expecting tyranny, found itself consulted. For the first time in living memory, an emperor had taken power without bloodshed. But the true test was yet to come. Could this new system, this idea that emperors should be chosen, not born, last beyond one succession? Or would Rome slide back into the old ways of daggers in the dark? The answer would come sooner than anyone thought, and from the most unexpected of places. Rome, 117 AD. 20 years after Nerva's death, Trajan lay dying in the ashes of his greatest conquest. The empire stretched farther than ever before, and yet the system that made it possible was already crumbling. For in his final moments, Trajan faced the same question Nerva once had: who would inherit Rome? His choice would determine whether Nerva's revolution or Rome itself would survive. On the surface, Nerva's system worked. Trajan had been Rome's greatest emperor in a century, expanding the empire, enriching its people, proving merit could trump bloodline. But beneath the marble, the fatal flaw festered. No law bound an emperor to follow Nerva's example, only honor, and honor in Rome had always been negotiable. When Hadrian took power, he did what Nerva and Trajan never had. He killed, not in open war, but in quiet purges. The senators who doubted him, executed. The generals too loyal to Trajan's memory, retired. The Praetorians, bought with gold. The precedent was set. Adoption still mattered, but now, so did the dagger. And with each succession that followed, the blade grew sharper. For a fleeting moment, under Marcus Aurelius, Nerva's dream flickered back to life. A philosopher king, chosen for his wisdom. But when Marcus broke the system, leaving the empire to his mad son Commodus, the truth became undeniable. No ideal could survive Rome's hunger for blood. The age of adoptive emperors died screaming, and with it died the last hope of a republic that once ruled the world. Today, Nerva is a footnote. No grand monuments bear his name. No epic films tell his story. But in those 16 short months, he gave Rome something it had never known before and has rarely seen since: a peaceful transfer of power. Proof that empires need not rise and fall by the sword alone. His revolution failed, but for one brief, shining moment, an old man taught the world that kings could be made, not born. And that lesson would echo long after Rome itself was dust. To uncover more lost turning points in history, join us next time The Past Unfolded, as we delve into another forgotten moment that shaped our world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to follow the journey into history's deepest shadows. Thank you.